I'm Paul Edwards, author of the Mourners Woods books, and first and foremost, a monster kid. Tonight, I'm watching Batman, Mask of the Phantasm. Superhero movies ordinarily are not something that I review on this channel, not because I don't like them, but just because they don't really fit in with the monster kid motif. But in this case, this particular movie has enough horror elements to it that I am going to review it. Batman, Mask of the Phantasm was a movie that came out while Batman the Animated Series was being produced in the early 1990s. In fact, this movie had a theatrical release during the time that the TV show was in its initial run on the air. What the story is basically a gigantic episode of Batman the Animated Series. And it tells the story of Bruce Wayne's old flame, a young woman who he had dated when he was a young adult and just starting to become Batman. She returns to town after years away. And at the same time that she returns to town, a mysterious figure, the Phantasm, arrives and starts killing off mob bosses from the old days. The Phantasm is a cloaked, partly armored figure that appears in a waft of smoke and kills mob bosses and then vanishes in the same way. So an impression is created that maybe this is some sort of a supernatural figure. But of course, Batman creates the impression that he's some sort of supernatural figure in order to scare the criminals. So we're already, pretty suspicious that maybe this is not really a supernatural being and something else is going on here. Now, the strange thing about this film took me a couple of viewings to fully appreciate. And that is that the romance aspect of the story, where we're getting these lengthy flashbacks to young Bruce Wayne meeting and dating this young woman and trying to decide whether he should really pursue his plans to become a vigilante or whether he should settle into a normal life with this young woman. That aspect of the story is actually way better than the superhero side of the story, where Batman is trying to track down the Phantasm and put an end to his or her crimes. A real problem in this story is that 2/3 of the way through the movie, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the Joker comes into it and becomes the main villain in the story. And it's a shift that just doesn't feel natural. It's not that they couldn't put an established villain like the Joker in the story. That's fine. But the way they did it made the whole film feel very uneven. So I'm not a huge fan of the superhero aspect of this story. I am a big fan of the human side, the dramatic side of it, the romance and the way that the romance unfolded. I think they did that very well in this film. Now, if the Phantasm looked sort of familiar to you, but not really, it's probably because it's very similar to a character called the Reaper, which appeared in Batman Year 2. And the Phantasm is awfully reminiscent of the Reaper, but it's not supposed to be the exact same character. But, it's like when Batman introduced the Puzzler, which was obviously a variation on the Riddler, same idea. It's essentially the same character, just with different names and a different backstory. So Batman, Mask of the Phantasm absolutely was good. It wasn't what people expected, though, from a theatrical release. And a strange thing happened where they sort of decided at the last minute to release it in movie theaters. So there wasn't a whole lot of advanced publicity like superhero movies usually get. So while superhero movies usually do well and Batman movies usually do well, this one did not do well in the theaters. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad. It had success when it was released on home media, and it still stands the test of time, I think. Listen, if you're a fan of classic monsters and vintage horror, check out my book series, the Mourners Woods books. I'm self-published on Amazon. My name again is Paul Edwards. My books are the Mourners Woods books. Thanks for letting me talk to you about Batman, Mask of the Phantasm. I'll see you in Mourners Woods.